Hi, Mike Brantley, auctioneer. I've had a blog at this point of this video for over 10 years, focusing on auction law, customary practice, industry standards, commercially reasonable, all those kinds of things rolled together, talking about all things auctioneering. But I'm not an attorney. Never attended law school, never took the bar. I have no formal legal training. I'm also not a doctor. I helped somebody the other day with deciding or helping them to get to a doctor. They were sick. I said, I think you should see a doctor. I didn't hold myself out as a doctor. I do the same thing with people who ask me for specific legal advice. I say, auctioneers generally would view that situation as, but you need to talk to your attorney. And I typically give them a name of 1, 2, 3 different attorneys, pointing out that I'm not an attorney, but that here's the general theme, here's the overview, here's what other auctioneers have told me about your situation, here's a similar situation and how it was handled. But again, you need to check with your attorney, find an attorney, and quite frankly, this area of the law, there aren't a great number of attorneys that have studied it in-depthly, and for good reason, because there isn't that much work to be done in this area. There are a limited number of lawsuits or claims filed that are auction related around the United States, around the world. There aren't that many auctioneers that are just completely in the dark in terms of contracts or terms and conditions or what have you, particularly with the internet. You find somebody else's, you copy it, change it, now you got yours. National associations, state auctioneer associations, seminars, designation academy, people in the hallway, at lunch, at the bar, at the restaurant, talking about, well, here's what I do, or I got in trouble for doing this, or I know an auctioneer that, lots of conversation, lots of ways to get, in essence, legal advice from people all around them. And admittedly, I have auctioneers contact me on a regular basis saying, Mike, can I talk over a situation with you? I say, well, I'm not an attorney. I'd be glad to listen to you. And they tell me the story. They tell me the situation. And I'll say, I guess if I had a typical answer, it might be something like, yeah, that sounds like maybe you've got a case, or sounds like possibly the things are kind of on your side. I think you're in a good position, or I think you're in a bad position. Do you have an attorney? Are you working with an attorney? If not, I can recommend somebody that can give you specific legal advice, because I'm not in a position to give you specific legal advice. I found online, I find a lot of stuff online, maybe you should too, things that would constitute practicing law. One would be holding myself, or you holding yourself out as an attorney. I got a sign up that says I'm an attorney. Well, that you got to be an attorney to say you're an attorney or hold yourself out as an attorney. Representing others, actually going to court and standing next to, I'm representing this client, or engaging a client to represent them in court or a proceeding or what have you. I've never done that. And you non-attorneys, you probably have never done that. Preparing documents on others' behalf. If there's anything here that kind of, there's a little of that. Not preparing the document, but maybe sharing documents. I think we auctioneers regularly share contracts, terms, conditions, whether they know it or not, and other auctioneers use that or take that and modify or what have you. And I think that's a good practice. I think that's welcome. State associations for a long time, auctioneer associations had standard contracts. Regulatory agencies had standard contracts, so-called standard contracts that you could use or modify for your purposes. So preparing documents, I don't prepare any documents for anybody. I might look over a contract and give them my thoughts in terms of liability or nonsensical terms or whatnot. again, ending with or coupling with, but have your attorney look this over. I'm going to give you my thoughts. Take it to your attorney. Get the final word in terms of protection, liability, that type of thing. And lastly, legal advice. Legal advice. Well, legal advice is advice for a particular situation. We've got maybe 50,000 auctioneers in the United States who give advice, legal related advice to each other on a regular basis. There's no shortage of that. I'm one in a group of auctioneers that on Facebook or otherwise that regularly says, I think that's a bad idea, or you can't do that, or you have to do this, or what have you. I don't think those things necessarily constitute legal advice, and could be maybe prefaced with you got to see your attorney, but we're trying to help each other here, be helpful, and that's what I'm trying to be. The blog is to give you some guidance or give you my view of a particular legal concept or what have you that you can take with my guidance to your attorney to make any final decisions on your policies or procedures or whatnot. The classes that I teach, particularly at the Certified Auctioneers Institute, I think about 2/3 of the way through the class, the first part of the class that is, I put up a slide of people that you need in your life, and one person you need in your life is an attorney, particularly for larger firms or number of employees, or you're doing business across state lines, or you selling high dollar items. The more successful, the bigger the company, the bigger the target, the more you need an attorney. There are large law firms in the United States that can assist with large auction firms who need legal advice, legal help. There are even large auction firms that have in-house counsel because they're doing enough work to deserve that. So there's no substitute for getting the right attorney. And there are attorneys who are closer to the entire picture of the auction industry than others. You might find, just a numerical example, you might find 30 across the United States that have some touch or feel of the auction industry. And of that 30, maybe 10 or so are highly skilled at looking at both sides. There's attorneys that typically advocate for the seller side, the auctioneer side, and don't really see the other side, it seems to me. There are attorneys that argue about the bidder and buyer side and don't seem to see the seller side or the auctioneer side. But there are a handful, several, that see it from both sides. And that's where your attorney counsel needs to be, someone that's looking at both sides. A lesson for auctioneers, even in auction school, might be one of the best lessons they can learn is that you need a seller, you need an owner, you need a client to have an auction, to engage, but you need bidders. If you don't have any bidders and you just have a seller, auctioneering can be kind of lonely. If you just have bidders but you don't have any sellers, if you don't have any clients, it's equally lonely because there's no reason to have a bidder if you don't have a seller. So this is the auction industry is a collaborative effort of auctioneers, sellers, bidders, and buyers who all participate in this process. And if your terms, your conditions, your attorney, your point of view is, well, it's all about this side, or it's all about that side. Well, if it's all about that side, what about this side? And vice versa. And it takes all of these people to make an auction. We make auctions to seller favorable, we're going to lose bidders and buyers. We make auctions to buyer bidder friendly, we might lose sellers. So there's a middle of the road here. Reasonable, fair, equitable. Those types of words come to mind. That both parties look at that situation and say that's good. I'm good with that. That seems reasonable. I'll participate. You like to have a seller who says, yes, I like the terms, I like the conditions, I like the contract. I think that's reasonable. And you like that bidder to look at those same terms, conditions, contract, and say, and I think that's reasonable. So we got to be careful. Attorney counsel is key. I cannot give you legal advice in your particular situation. I can comment generally, and I'm glad to listen. And I serve as an expert witness, and I can tell you that if your attorney hires me to be an expert witness, that's what I'm going to be as an expert witness. I'm going to give you my point of view. But your attorney is going to give you legal advice. Mike Brantley, Auctioneer. Pleasure to be with you today. Other videos on the same page, others forthcoming. Have a great day and stay safe.